This episode of World Wellness Education is made possible by a production grant from the Milhorn Law Firm. Have you or a loved one ever suffered an injury due to the negligence of another? Then it's time to turn to a law firm that you know and trust, one with a record of client satisfaction and integrity. Hello, my name is Ryan Milhorn, and the Milhorn Law Firm has been representing personal injury clients in the Central Florida area for over 20 years. Our attorneys live in this community and are very proud to call it home. The Milhorn Law Firm, the law firm you know and trust.
Hi, I'm Tracy Brosman, co-founder of World Wellness Education, a community forum to educate, encourage, and inspire a better way of life. We commonly face day-to-day challenges of stress, lack of exercise, and poor eating habits. But with the right approach, we can find freedom, wake up each morning feeling healthy, focused, and ready to take on the day. Together, we can make a difference, one story at a time. Today, we will be talking about an autoimmune disorder that gradually destroys the thyroid gland, disrupting the hormones released into the body. Hashimoto's thyroiditis, also known as chronic lymphocytic thyroiditis, is a rare disease and affects women 5 to 10 times more often than men. Our guest today is Cindy Long. Cindy was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis over 10 years ago. As a result, she also developed rheumatoid arthritis along with several other complications. Cindy is here to share her story with us on how she beat the odds and found wellness once again. Welcome, Cindy.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. Sharing your story, that's powerful. So tell me, Cindy, what type of symptoms did you see before you were diagnosed?
At the onset, most of the symptoms were not things that I thought were symptoms. I was in a very stressful job, actually working 2 jobs, and had a second job that was 80 hours a week in addition to the first.
Oh, wow.
So I was running a women's professional football team and traveling and training and a lot of stress, raising money. So initially my first symptom was probably just sheer exhaustion, which I attributed to just my lifestyle. I was running ragged.
Were burning the candle at both ends.
Yeah, and high stress, both jobs. I was also running a call center. And add to that the stress of, nights with practices and training and recruiting players and just all of that. So initially, I think my first symptom was exhaustion that I just wrote off to, it was self-inflicted.
Right, your lifestyle.
The next major symptom that occurred was in a matter of probably 4 to 6 months, I went from a size 2 to a size 22. I gained about 87 pounds.
Gosh. What do you wear, right?
Right, yeah, I literally ended up going to work in sweatpants the last few months of it because I couldn't keep up with buying clothes enough to even keep up with the weight gain as fast as it was coming. And so probably I made the thing worse, exacerbated it by starving myself, trying to lose weight. I was eating literally heads of lettuce and nothing else. And
you were still gaining weight?
Still gaining weight.
So did you see a doctor during that time?
Probably about 6 months to a year prior to that, I had been involved in a very bad hit-and-run car accident. And my knees had gone through the dashboard. I sustained neck and back injuries, have bulging discs, whiplash. So there was a lot of other things going on with my body that a lot of it was attributed to, well, that must be from the car accident.
Right.
So there was a lot of confusion in the doctors and the diagnosis. So my GP that I was seeing at the time, and I finally went to her office and I literally collapsed in tears and said, help, what do I do? She said, let's try addressing one thing at a time. I had already been on thyroid medication. My family has a history of thyroid, so I've been taking Synthroid since I was about 15.
Okay.
So my thyroid levels were regularly checked. The TSH levels, which is very important for people to understand that there's a big difference between checking your TSH and checking your T3s and T4s, which is what basically drives the TSH. And I'm not a medical professional, but I understand a little bit after years of dealing with this.
That you need to get all of it
all
checked.
Of it needs to be checked. That was probably the main thing that everybody did wrong, is they kept checking my TSH levels and telling me they're fine. So
because they weren't checking your other
They
levels.
weren't checking. They never checked any of it.
Wow, so was she able to make any difference in your knees or your weight gain?
I was having all sorts of complications. So probably after about 9 months of her not being able to figure out what was wrong, the first person she sent me to see was a GI doctor.
Okay.
And he did a full upper and lower GI exam because I was also having all sorts of intestinal issues. And he diagnosed me with pernicious anemia, which a lot of people don't understand what pernicious anemia is versus regular anemia.
What is the difference?
Pernicious anemia is the inability for the body to absorb B12 through food or orally. So, and I'm sure there's a medical way to explain this, but in layman's term, your stomach lining produces an acid that when you eat food of any kind that has B12 in it, that acid bonds with the B12, and that's how it gets into your system. My body stopped making that chemical that bonds with the B12. So I was taking pills, I was eating B12 heavy food, nothing would work. So the very first thing that started this was the GI doctor was able to figure out that I was suffering from pernicious anemia, and started me then 10 years ago on weekly B12 injections.
Okay.
And I still get them every week.
So, and did you start seeing relief?
The relief from the pernicious anemia, that one of the major side effects of pernicious anemia that people don't realize is when it's that bad, when your B12 stores are that low, the inside of your mouth just gets raw. So I know when I'm low, my mouth will get really raw and sore inside.
Oh,
So
that's
that was the
very
reason the GI
interesting.
doctor
I
was
never knew
able.
that.
Yeah, that was how he figured it out. Was
Okay.
when he did my upper endoscopy, he noticed that, and my dentist actually noticed it as well. So that was the very first diagnosis before, and it was another 18 months traveling down this road. After I left the GI and went back to my GP, who, by the way, was phenomenal. She's no longer in the state, but she managed through this, and she became my portal. So every doctor that I went to, I was absolutely diligent that they send every record back to her, so that if I have one doctor saying one thing and another saying another, I had one person kind of
Who
collecting
can make
it
sense of it
right.
all, because you can't, it's too hard when it's
Yeah.
left to you, who is not a
Yeah.
doctor, did not go to
And
school.
I was so overwhelmed by everything that was going on, and so exhausted,
Yeah.
and so tired of talking to people about it and getting just different reports. Every specialist that I saw, who obviously they specialize in this,
Right.
then it has to be this, and they would give me a diagnosis based on only their specialty, and then I would go back to her and say, well, she would say, that doesn't make sense if you combine it with what this guy says or what
Wow.
that guy says.
So were you getting some scary diagnosis?
I was diagnosed with, the first scary one was lupus.
Oh, yeah.
Which I had just had an aunt die of lupus probably about 2 years prior to that, so that kind of set me over the edge. Then they, they tell you something before they do the blood work. We think you've got this, but we're going to do the blood work and check. So then they leave you there for 2 weeks panicking.
And you think you have this
Right, and that makes it worse because you're stressed and your body
Right.
reacts to the stress. And,
Of course.
So I went through a gamut of diagnoses: lupus, Sojourn's, Crohn's disease. Probably the scariest was they told me that they thought I probably had AIDS, which
Wow.
was
Oh, Cindy.
terrifying.
Yeah.
I was getting blood drawn from 5 different specialists every week. I got on a first name basis with my phlebotomist. I used to call her my vampire. And I was there every single week, and they would take
Wow.
6 to 7 vials of blood.
For a different doctor.
Yeah, different doctors trying to figure out what's going on. What ended up happening, the major symptom that was kind of the catalyst to the diagnosis, is because of my car accident. One of my knees had gone through a dashboard in a car. I was in a hit and run accident, and my left knee had been just swelling up, literally the size of a softball or a beach ball. And
Oh, wow.
it would collapse on me when I was walking. I would just be walking along and it would just give out. So finally my GP said, let's just send you to an orthopedist and have him look at your knee, do an MRI, and let's just try and find you relief somewhere on one thing. I went in to see, and I can't even remember the name of the place. It's in Orlando, and they're the orthopedics for the UCF football team.
Okay.
The best of the best guys. Went in and had MRIs done on both my knees, both my hips, and on my lower back, trying to figure out what was causing this. And surprisingly enough, they actually gave me the results the same day, which nobody else was doing it. They do an MRI and you'd wait 2 weeks, or they do an X-ray and they wait 2 weeks.
Right.
And this guy pulled me back in his office, real nice guy, young. He was, I would say he was probably in his 40s, and I almost had that "you're too young to know what you're talking about" mentality.
Uh-oh.
And he simply said, I did an X-ray of your knee. You have one small calcium deposit in the back of it that was probably due to the injury, but this is not causing any damage. It's, it just is what it is, scar tissue. He took out his prescription pad and wrote some numbers down and handed it to me and said, take this back to your doctor. If any one of these 3 blood tests come back positive, you have rheumatoid.
Wow.
I'm like,
You're too young to have
35.
rheumatoid.
I think I was 35 or 36 when he told me that, and I thought, there's no way. I'm young, I'm healthy,
Right.
grossly overweight at the time, but so I took it back to my GP, and she ordered the tests. all 3 of them came back off the scales with rheumatoid.
Okay, so, and he said only one,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and all 3 of them came back, which was, she didn't even call me in for an appointment. She literally called me and said, go see this guy today. And she sent me to a rheumatologist in Orlando who, God love him, he had the personality of a stone, but he is the doctor that, he runs clinical trials for rheumatoid arthritis medication. So he's kind of the best of the best. He's where they send you when no one else can figure out how to fix you.
Okay.
So he squeezed me in, and I went and saw him, I think, like a week after that, sat down, and he literally didn't say a word to me. I mean, he has like no personality, just one of those guys so smart, but he has no human contact personality. And he did all the little tests and bend this and bend that, and ordered another round of probably, I think they did 17 different blood tests. I mean, he gave me a sheet with like everything checked. And when I got the results back to that, I went back in to see him. And he probably said 15 words to me. And what he said to me is, you do have rheumatoid, but it is not the problem, it's a symptom. I believe you have Hashimoto's disease. I didn't even know what it was. Never heard of it.
Just another scary name.
Yeah, but he said rheumatoid is a symptom of when your Hashimoto's progresses so far, because Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disorder, and once you have one, it triggers others, as is pernicious anemia is an autoimmune disorder. So he said it's taken so long, and this was 18 months before I ended up with him. So there was an 18-month span of doctors and diagnosis and horrible things before I finally found somebody that said, this is what's wrong with you. And then he referred me off to an endocrinologist.
Wow. So at that point, did you feel any relief, or did you just feel more fear? Because you've been diagnosed so many times.
I actually didn't believe him, primarily because he didn't talk. When you have a doctor.
He didn't make you feel real comfortable.
No, he was, his bedside manner was worse than horrible. And what ended up happening is, after he told me this, of course I sat in his office and just like went into waterworks, like another diagnosis of this big scary word that I don't know what it is or what it means. He didn't even tell me what it was or what it meant. And so his nurse came in and sat down with me, and she was amazing. And she said, he can't talk. But let me tell you what he's telling you here. And she kind of explained to me a little bit about what it was, and that it was a thyroid disorder, and that basically it was an autoimmune, and that your thyroid wasn't acting right. And she's like, don't panic. I'm going to send you to this endocrinologist. She'll know how to take care of you. And so she was probably the most comforting person through all of this. And she wasn't even a nurse. She was his billing agent. She was the one that did his medical billing, but just because she knew enough about it to talk to me. So I set up an appointment with an endocrinologist who again did a gajillion blood tests on me, and she was the first one to pull my T3 and T4 test. And I don't understand even now how the numbers work, but whatever she saw was enough for her to say, okay, this is bad. We need to address this. So the Synthroid that I was on, and it goes in like MCGs, minimal amounts, how they give you the prescription. And I can't remember what the exact number was, but for instance, I think I was on 0.12 mcgs. And you can't pop someone up in Synthroid from where they are to what they need. You have to gradually raise the Synthroid. So I ended up at 137. So that was the difference from 12 to 137 where I ended up. But it took them almost a year to slowly get my levels up, and then going in for blood tests every 2 to 4 weeks to make sure nothing else was going wrong while they were infusing me with all this thyroid medication. Wow.
So did you start feeling better at that point, or, was it immediate, or?
I would say I felt better than where I was.
Okay.
So that was the first thing.
You always have your baseline, right?
Yeah, and I don't think at that point, because it had been so long, I don't think I remembered what it was like not to be sick. Not to feel exhausted or tired or have your hair fall out. My hair was down to my waist when I started getting sick. And it fell out in such big chunks. I would run my hands through it and chunks would fall out of my hair. I went to my hairdresser, and God love him, he was so sweet. He said, we just got to cut it off. It's just so heavy. What you have is so heavy that your follicles are being damaged, that let's just cut it off. So I ended up with like Sinead O'Connor haircut.
Wow, and that must have been traumatic too, because for women who have really long hair,
and it never had short hair,
and never
had short hair,
and didn't want it, obviously, not by choice.
Yeah, no. So in addition to that, I was still, mind you, about 87 pounds overweight, And it was not a good overweight. I mean, I was bloated. It wasn't like I just gained weight. I was bloated and my skin was blotchy. There wasn't enough makeup in the world to cover what was going on with everything else. Even my eyebrows started to fall out at some point.
Oh my goodness.
And of course that wasn't near as drastic, but I noticed it. It was just things that you notice that, you stand in the mirror, you're putting on your makeup, and you're like, well, I used to have more eyelashes than that.
And you're in your mid-30s. It's not that you are older and you're thinking, okay, well, I'm in my 70s or 80s, and it's normal for maybe my eyebrows to get a little bit thinner.
Right. I'm in what should be your prime of your life,
Right. Well, wow. So you started gradually feeling a little bit better. Did you start losing the weight?
That was another battle altogether. One of the side effects of gaining all the weight is that I ended up with extremely high blood pressure. Heart palpitations, craziness going on, which might have also been affected by the stress of all that.
Right.
So by time it was all said and done, between the endocrinologist, the rheumatologist, the GI doctor, and my GP, I was on a daily regimen of, at that point, 8 prescription medications.
Wow.
One of the other side effects I was having from a female standpoint is I was experiencing extremely painful cycles to the point where I was passing out.
Oh my gosh.
So then they sent me to an OBGYN specialist, and she did ultrasounds and all sorts of stuff, and they diagnosed me with polycystic ovarian disease, which again is another autoimmune that's kind of a side effect of all of it, that my hormones just weren't working right. Your thyroid gland controls every hormone in your body. So when it's off, everything starts shutting down and getting weird. So she ended up putting me on another prescription.
Wow. So you're better now. So what was the turning point? Where did you finally find that turning point through all of this?
There was probably 2 turning points. One was finally seeing the OB, the endocrinologist, and all of them, and getting me on this literally bag of pills every day, where I felt like I was better. And I stayed on that regimen for almost 5 years. And then about 2.5 years ago, symptoms started coming back. Now, the weight loss was a huge struggle for me. Some of it did come off when they got my thyroid stabilized.
Okay.
And actually, the funniest thing that anyone told me was my endocrinologist when I went in there and said, I'm on this diet, I'm doing this. She said, honey, it's not going to matter. Your thyroid is out of whack. She said, if you feel like eating a hot fudge sundae and a box of Krispy Kremes, go do it.
Oh,
because it's not going to matter. Because I went on like the 6-week body makeover. I was taking all the over-the-counter, diet pills. She said, none of this will matter until you get your thyroid right. She said, so quit stressing out about the food. Eat the comfort food. Eat what you want. Eat what your body's craving. It'll start coming off when it comes off naturally. So I had probably about a 3-month ice cream and donut binge that I went on. That was kind of fun. So once we got the thyroid stabilized, about 50 pounds of, maybe about 40 to 50 pounds of the weight I gained came off just by the thyroid medication. And I tried everything to get the rest of it off, and my blood pressure was still off the charts. It was still bad.
So you were exercising and trying to
I was
watch your
exercising as much as I
calories
could, but my arthritis at that point was so bad that when we bought our house 8 years ago, my partner made me walk up and down the stairs 6 times before we bought it to make sure we could buy it because I couldn't get up the stairs.
Wow.
So, it's scary. I mean, to be that physically fit and that active. I mean, I was
before
before, and then suddenly getting off the couch was an overwhelming feat for me. Like, I would go to work and I would come home and I would crash at 5 o'clock and I would sleep till 6 in the morning and get up and go to work, and I would take a nap at lunch instead of taking a lunch at my 8-hour day job. I was that exhausted.
Gosh.
And that lasted for probably 2 years, where I was finally put on family medical leave for work so that I had the ability to...
You'd obviously given up the second job.
I folded my football team about a year and a half into this, so I just let it go. There was something had to go, and that went. But the family medical leave gave me the ability to call in sick and not worry about losing my job. So it's not something that you want to do, but when you're in a situation like that where your health has to come first, and nobody at my office really got what was going on. They just thought, oh, she's gained weight and she had a car accident. They didn't really get what I was going through. So having doctors that were sympathetic enough to understand how difficult this was, and have them force that on my employer, that if she can't get out of bed, she can't come to work, and that to me was a relief that I had the ability to say, I can't come in today.
Right.
Because the stress of knowing that I was going to lose my job over this was just adding to it.
Was adding to it.
Yeah.
When you said that there were two things, one was finally getting the diagnosis and getting some medications to help. What was the second thing?
The second thing was obviously getting all the medications and the diagnosis helped, and I was doing really well for about 4 years, at least what I thought was, it was, you know, it's a level of wellness compared to where I was. And then about 2.5 years ago, some symptoms started coming back. And I have gotten so attuned to my body and my thyroid disorder that you know when something's wrong.
Right.
Like you can tell.
And now you're paying attention and you know exactly.
Right. I know what the symptoms are. I know what it feels like. I know what, you know, I can tell you when my thyroid meds are too low. I know. I can. My body tells me. And so I started feeling badly again. I went back to my endocrinologist and I said, my thyroid's off again. I need you to up my dose. And she did all the blood work and she said, no, actually we need to lower it. And I was in tears. I'm like, no, I'm gaining weight. My hair is falling out. I can't get out of bed again. I'm right back to, I was literally sliding back to where I was 5 years earlier. And she was just insistent that the numbers say this, you know, and that was basically where she left it. And that is when I met Joanne Keller. And I went in to see her and explained to her what was going on. And mind you, I talked to her for about 6 months before I actually went to see her because I was still in that mindset that I have a specialist. They know everything.
Right.
And she told me she believed that I was suffering from what's called synthroid poisoning.
Oh.
And I thought,
well, you'd been on it since you were 15,
Right.
and then you upped the dose.
yeah. So I thought, well, I've never heard of that. My endocrinologist didn't say anything about that. Nobody's ever even mentioned that this was even a disease. And so, of course, the first thing I do, what all of us do now, is I go home and Google it.
Right.
And Googling it, I find out that all the symptoms that I was having that mimic your thyroid being too low are also the symptoms of synthroid poisoning. Your hair falling out, the weight coming back.
So did she start changing? We're running out of time, and I want to make sure that
Yes, she did.
we get through.
Ultimately, what she ended up doing over a course of 18 months was, first thing she did was take me off the Synthroid and put me on an organic thyroid compound.
Okay.
And that was the very first change she made. And within 3 months of doing that, and within that 3 months, I was able to come off every other prescription I was on.
Wow.
I came off the rheumatoid medication. I came off the high blood pressure medication. Everything else that they had me on, I stopped taking. Gradually, we started weaning everything off. To the last prescription that I was taking was the continuously prescribed birth control for my polycystic ovarian disease. In the interim, she started through me kicking and screaming, started having me take Juice Plus, nutritional supplements, and I did that. And I have to tell you that within 3 to 4 months of taking that on a religiously regular basis, I woke up one day and went, wow, this is how I'm supposed to feel. It was literally like waking up out of a haze.
Oh, Cindy.
So, that was probably the best thing she ever did for me, was just something that simple, just telling your body you need to eat right. Now, mind you, through this whole course of this, I was eating well. I had, I'd done enough research to know that nutrition and antioxidants and blueberries and spinach and all the good things, because the antioxidants would fight the rheumatoid. But that was just kind of the thing that got me over the edge, was doing that.
Well, that is absolutely phenomenal. You have really been through a lot, and I know that sharing your story is very powerful and touching to many, many people, and I really appreciate you doing that. If people would like to get a hold of you to find out more information, can they do that?
Absolutely.
How would they get in touch with you?
Actually, I run my own business here in town. I have 2 businesses that I run. One is Girl for a Day. I'm a graphic designer, and yes, Girl for a Day. If you just Google girlforaday.com, you can get to my website. And then I also run the Tangerine Networking Group, which is a small business networking group through Central Florida. And that's actually where I met Joanne. She's a member there. So I met her at a meeting. So you can get hold of me through either one of those websites.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thanks again, Cindy. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was nice to be here.
Together, we make a difference, one story at a time. If you'd like to find out more about World Wellness Education, go to our website at worldwellnesseducation.org. The list of benefits from coconut oil is long. The Pacific Islanders considered coconut oil the cure of all illness. Studies on Pacific Islanders who get 30 to 60% of their calories from coconut oil found that cardiovascular disease is almost non-existent, and the population is healthy and trim. Coconut oil kills viruses that cause influenza, measles, hepatitis C, and other illnesses. Coconut oil kills bacteria that causes ulcers, throat infections, urinary tract infections, gum disease, tooth decay, pneumonia, and other diseases. Coconut oil kills fungi and yeast that cause candida, ringworm, athlete's foot, thrush, diaper rash, and other infections. With these 3 statements, you are most likely convinced that using coconut oil is a good thing. However, that is just the tip of the iceberg. Coconut oil also kills tapeworms, lice, and other parasites. On top of all of these benefits, coconut oil improves digestion and absorption of other nutrients, including vitamins, minerals, and amino acids. There are so many benefits that it is impossible to discuss them in one wellness tip. However, you need to know that coconut oil is good for hair care, skin care, and anti-aging. It is important in preventing and fighting heart disease, diabetes, HIV, and cancer. Nearly 50% of the fat in coconut oil is of a type rarely found in nature called lauric acid and has unique properties that promote good health. This oil is a nutritional source of quick energy. It boosts endurance, which enhances physical and athletic performance. Coconut oil is also nature's richest source of medium-chain fatty acids, also called medium-chain triglycerides. By contrast, most common vegetable or seed oils are comprised of long-chain fatty acids, also known as long-chain triglycerides. Long-chain fatty acids are large molecules, so they are difficult for your body to break down and are predominantly stored as fat. But medium-chain fatty acids are digested easier and immediately burned by your liver for energy. They act a lot like carbohydrates, but without the insulin spike. Medium-chain fatty acids actually boost your metabolism and help your body use fat for energy as opposed to storing it, so you can actually help you become leaner. Coconut oil has also been known to increase your metabolism, which assists in weight loss. You are probably wondering if you heard me correctly. Yes, you did. There is actually an oil that helps you lose weight. In the 1940s, a group of farmers decided to feed their livestock coconut oil to fatten them up for market. They were very surprised when the cows became leaner and more active. Now the next question is, how do you get more coconut oil in your diet? Coconut oil is the best oil to cook with because it has the highest flash point of any oil. So replace the cooking oil in your recipes with coconut oil. It also makes a great salad dressing, or just add a spoon of oil to your smoothie. I even know individuals who just eat a spoon of coconut oil each morning. This information is not meant to be medical advice. No action or inaction should be taken solely on the contents of this information. Instead, you should consult appropriate health professionals on any matter relating to your health and well-being. Thanks for joining us, and remember you can catch the show each week on Lakefront TV. To find out more about World Wellness Education, check out our website at worldwellnesseducation.org. We'll see you next time.
This episode of World Wellness Education is made possible by a production grant from the Milhorn Law Firm.
We at the Milhorn Law Firm believe that important decisions in planning should not be put on hold. These planning decisions affect not only you, but your children and heirs. My name is Eric Milhorn. I'm one of 7 attorneys here at the Milhorn Law Firm. We've been very fortunate. We've been able to serve the Central Florida area for a period of over 20 years. All the attorneys at the Milhorn Law Firm live in this area and are proud to call this area our home.
The Milhorn Law Firm, the law firm you know and trust.